always been a continent of sharing. It's always been a continent of collaboration. It's been a continent of working together. And I think that is the important background and context that we should work from. And if we just look at the San people, the Ku and the San people, and how closely they worked with nature. And again, people will often tell you that they were hunter-gatherers, and therefore they probably lived a desperate existence. They were continuously looking. They were continuously hunting for food. They were continuously hungry. No, 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 not at all. There's also beautiful studies done on the Ku people and the San people, and it was really a life of abundance. It was a life of enough food around. You had to go and get it when you wanted to. And that brings me to the famous story of the Dogon tribe that I like so much. They lived in Mali many, many centuries ago. In the area of Mali, there's still some alive today. But they believed, firstly, that you had to work very hard. And secondly, they believed this was at your job. So whatever you were doing, art in those days or agriculture or whatever you might do, you had to work very hard at that. But secondly, they believed that you also had to work very, very hard at your family and your friends, because without your family and your friends, a job would mean nothing. And thirdly, they believed you had to work very hard at yourself to gain knowledge, spirituality, to make yourself a better person. And the fourth was they believed that you had to rest. So equally, you had to work at these four areas, because without rest, you couldn't do any of the others. Now, how sophisticated is that coming from our African continent? And this is, as I say, the context where we come from. And so often we ignore this and we move straight into this period of scarcity that was brought along by the colonialism and the slavery that so rudely interrupted the African progress. And therefore, our customer centricity and our customer service should be based, as it was then, on respect. We should give each other good service because of respect. It should be like in the old African village. If you look back, and it's difficult because there's not a lot written about it, but if we research and we look, it was all about reciprocity. It was all about living and existing together, very much like we do in our homes, those of us that are co-inhabitants today in this lockdown period. But it was about finding that you had to respect the people that lived with you, that you had to help the people. If you look at the saying of it takes a village to raise a child in Africa, that's exactly what it was all about. A village worked together, a village did things together, a village collaborated. John Foster Pedley, our dean, said the other day, spoke about the collaborative advantage, and I like that so very much, because it is about a collaborative advantage, and that was the advantage of our continent. It was a collaborative advantage, and I would so wish that we would wake up this collaboration again. When I was a little boy, I was very fortunate. There was a man in my life called Jan S. Murray. He started a bank called the Trust Bank. And we used to go on holidays together to a little village called Eysterfontein, which is now probably quite a big town outside Cape Town. I remember there were only about 20 houses in those days, and we lived in this beautiful little cottage right on the rocks. And in the mornings, we walked with our dogs. I had a little wire-haired terrier in those days, and he had two big dogs. And we would walk for hours on the beach, and I was 8 years old, 9 years old. And Jan would say to me, Frans, the most important thing in business is customer service. I have managed to build the Trust Bank, and he did, against the big other banks, and they did extremely well later on. They overinvested heavily in property, and they did lose it. But in the beginning, it was exceptionally successful. And he said he managed to go up against the big guys and become one of the big four in a very short time, only because he concentrated on his customer, only because he put his customer at the center of his business. And simultaneously so, I also learned a lot from the person I worked for and worked with in many circumstances, probably one of the greatest retailers alive today, a man called Raymond Ackerman. And Raymond taught us many lessons. I will never forget. Some of his sayings was that you have to listen to the whispers of tomorrow, Frans. And here we are And how important are these whispers of tomorrow for us to listen to now so that we can be successful after this coronavirus period that we're going through that we've never seen before. But Raymond said to me, Frans, you know what? I never understand. You guys, I was a young trainee manager at Pick n Pay. And he said, you guys, you will fight for half an hour with the customer. And you will say to her, ma'am, I am not going to give you the money back, the 30 rand for this meat that you've purchased, because I don't think that you left it in the fridge. You probably left it out. That's why it's not working. Or you're going to say to her, this I can clearly say you bought from Checkers and not from Pick n Pay. He said, why don't you just give the 30 rand? Do you know what will happen? That customer, even if she bought the product from somewhere else, the famous Nordstrom story and the tires you all know, even if you bought it from somewhere else, you would have won, she would respect you and you would have won a customer for life. And that's what it's all about. It's about that respect, and it's about giving our customers more than what they ever expect from us. But now here is the problem. On our African continent, how often do we give this customer service? How often do we respect our customers? I have been to many shops, and I was lucky and privileged that I was part of opening many Pick n Pays, and many of them in the rural areas and the townships. And we fought very hard to give good customer service because it was non-existent before. I will never forget, we opened in a store in Venda, and I spoke to a customer, and she obviously didn't have a lot of money. And she was buying a bread and some margarine and milk. And I said to her, ma'am, did you enjoy shopping with us? And she said to me, you know what? I don't know what it is, but it feels very nice to be in there. Now that is what we need to try and create all over our continent, is that people can walk out of our shops and say, it felt very nice to be in there. I was in a shop in Luanda not so long ago, and I said to the manager, do you ever speak to your customers? And he said, no, Frans, and looked at me as if, what's he on about? Why should I speak to my customers? And he said, I don't, because I don't have time. I'm too busy, and the customers know what they want. They don't need me. That's the big mistake. Now, if we shop and ask the manager in Sandton or in Constantia in Cape Town that very question, they will say, yes, of course. So why are we not doing this with our customers in other areas? Why are we not doing this with our customers on the continent? I've gone to South African shops on our continent, and the same applies. In many instances, the shop is beautifully presented, I'll give you that. But in most instances, nobody ever has a conversation with the customer. Now, what I would like to say to you, and what I think is going to happen as the competition arrives in Africa, and we're seeing it already, and as this continent is getting more competitive and people are moving in, and we know our people are connected, about 80% of the people on our continent have phones. And many of those are smartphones already. They are not all, but you can imagine that if we offer every person a smartphone, they're not going to say, no, thank you, I don't want it. They will take it. So people are more connected. People understand what's going on in the world, and people would love to be recognized as customers. So what I was saying, as the competition arrives, as it becomes more competitive, people will start choosing those businesses that respect them, those businesses that give them the good customer service. Today still, you would go into a store in Tembisa, for instance, and they would search you, or they would check your slip when you walk out the door. If I go and shop in Constantia or Sandton, nobody ever checks my till slip. So why? Why are we doing this? What is the assumption here? The assumption, I assume, is that people are more likely to steal in these areas. And we know, we've proven that that's wrong. We've proven it with the shrinkage in stores. We've proven it that it's no higher in the townships than anywhere else. I remember again opening a store in Soweto, and the young man whose grandmother was there, who was our owner in this shop, and she said to me, you know, Frans, we're a community here. We look after each other. We will make sure that my grandson's store is okay, and then it does well. We know everything that's happening in the community, and that you don't have in Sandton. So let's look just at what retail is. Retail is a fairly simple thing, although a lot of the old school retailers will say to you, oh, no, 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 France, it's very complicated retail. You have to work for 5 years in it before you understand it. That's not true. Retail is about merchandise, having the correct merchandise at the right time, at the right place. And of course, that goes into procurement because we must make sure that we buy it at the right price to be able to sell it at the right price. Retail is about a margin. We want to keep our margins low in food retail so that we can stay competitive. In clothing retail, obviously, we know that that's different. And then retail is about expenses. We need to control our expenses. Because we're working on low margins, we have to ensure that we keep our expenses low. And then we have to push volume through the system. With all of that, it needs sales to be able to work. Then, of course, it's about stock holding. It's because of, you cannot have huge amounts of stock sitting in your warehouses. The old thing that Raymond Ackerman also told me is you buy the goods. This is food retail yet again. You sell the goods, and only then do you pay for the goods. And that is part of the retail model. And of course, you have to have exceptionally good controls to keep all of this in place and keep going. But that's no rocket science. But where does the competitive advantage, or rather than the collaborative advantage, come from? It comes from your customer centricity. It comes from how well you treat your customers and how you position your customer at the center of our businesses. Do you know how many South Africans go onto the African continent and open businesses without ever having researched the culture of that country, without ever having read about the history of that country, without ever having gone to sit at a corner street in my old days at a tavern to find out how people think, what they talk about, what they would like? I have met so many business executives that operate on the continent, but I've never done that. Now that's part of the respect. That's part of the way the old African village operated that we want to rekindle, and that spirit we want to bring back into our businesses today. I also have, we are known on the continent as South Africans as being quite arrogant. And unfortunately, this is because we often walk in and we pretend that we know everything instead of listening a bit, instead of acquiring some knowledge about the area that we're going to operate in. But again, I think our latest competitive edge will be in Africa going forward the customer service. And obviously we, in South Africa, we see a lot of online retail now. We're seeing it. There's a big growth. I mean, if you look at the retail growth, store growth on the continent of below 10%, and you look at the online growth of 50% coming from a very low base, there is a lot of growth. But in the cities like Kinshasa, in the cities as such, we are not going to see online exploding immediately. So we're in still for quite a long run on our stores, which are bricks and mortar, and where we're going to have to treat our customers very well. I would so love to have seen some of our retailers come to the party here and said, well, it's so difficult for our customers, and in our rural areas and in our African stores where people are also locked down, to say to people, well, we are going to sell for the next 2 months. We'll sell our chicken at cost. We'll sell our bread at cost. We'll sell our maize meal at cost. What a wonderful opportunity to sacrifice a little bit of your profit, but to buy big, big, big loyalty. And then to do all of that with a smile and with excellent, excellent customer service. I just want to briefly, before I finish, touch on this concept of shared value, which I think is so important, that as businesses, we need to move more into the area of shared value, where we see all our stakeholders as exceptionally important, and especially our employees and our customers, where we give opportunities to our customers, because I believe the ultimate customer centricity is where we are also enabling our customers to develop, where we are enabling our customers to become the owners of the retail of tomorrow, where we create those sort of opportunities through giving our customers knowledge, through giving them the opportunities. We have a continent of 1.3 billion people. Of the 1.3 billion people, 65% are below the age of 25. That is an enormous opportunity as well. But we need to give our young people purpose. We need to give our young people hope, So wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if our supermarkets can move into this space and start selling hope and start selling happiness and start selling experience and start selling opportunities for the young people of our continent. We have a beautiful continent. Everywhere I go on this continent, I have young people saying to me, "France, what can we do to be successful?" They are eager, they want to happen, they want to do something, but we are not getting the opportunities to our people quick enough. And I believe that we can do that through supermarkets. But it takes a little bit of sacrifice in the beginning. But again, I think I can surely say to you that the next 5 years of sacrifice will lead you to 100 years of success. And this is the success not only for the children of our continent, but for your children as well. Thank you very much.
Wow, I love that. Selling hope, happiness, opportunity, as opposed to just something, you know. It's such a holistic view. It's beautiful. What I've also been struck by during your talk now is how, despite the very real responsibility and service of customer service, meaning from the provider of the product or service to the customer, I would argue that there's an equal responsibility for this, for hope, happiness, and opportunity from us as the customer as well. And I'll give an example. So last week, I went out. I've been out once on a grocery run since lockdown. And the experience was beyond the obvious, was fundamentally different than any other grocery shop that I can recall in recent memory. And the difference was that I found the level of customer service far more gracious, far more kind, far more attentive. And I reflected on that and I thought, I wonder if it's not driven by that behavior in us as the customers, meaning we so much more mindful. We go to the grocery shop, we buy groceries and we go home. That's what we're allowed to do right now. And yeah, I think it was just, again, hope, happiness, opportunity that you spoke to. It's a unidirectional thing, I believe. So Nakwazi just comments, France, that they're grateful for your note about privilege, because it troubles me how when I go to the township, I'm treated differently to when I go shopping in Sandton. Customer service training is so important. And then Tom notes that he's worked in organizations where they themselves have acknowledged that they are not easy to do business with, yet they still have customers and make budget. And the question is, why do customers return to these companies?
Well, I suppose, it's in many instances, one is so used to having been treated, so many of our customers in the country and on the continent have never experienced good customer service. They do not understand what it is all about. And people understand just that it's about, you go shopping, you will find the product, it's the price-driven strategy. You'll find the product, it's a good price, and then you'll queue up and you'll wait, because that's what we've made people do for so many years. So it is about those first players that will come out, I think, with the great customer service where we surprise people. And then people will say, well, this, as the old lady said to me in the shop, wow, this feels nice. This feels good. This is where I actually want to be. And I think that is then how we will get the loyal customers coming to us. But how dare we have a business and not give respect to our customers? And we're doing that simply because of circumstances at the moment. And it would never work. I mean, some of the supermarkets we're running on the African continent and in the rural areas of South Africa will close down within weeks in a city like New York or Zurich or Brisbane, Australia. So why are we then happy to run such businesses?
Mm.
People are still spending their money with us. They are still coming to us. But in many instances, they're simply coming because the shop is close by and because it has the goods. And I will just take what they give me and I'll stand in the queue. I'll be searched when I leave the premises. And that's how it's going to be, because that's how it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And I think we really can do something really different, something new, something fresh. And it all comes back to me, to the respect at the end of the day.
Which is what you said earlier in your talk, is we should give each other good service out of respect.
And that to me is the basis. It's not about anything else. It's absolutely about respecting each other. And that's a great old African value. And we need to wake that up again. It was then became respect for a few on the continent. We should take it back to respect for all. And what a lovely place to start this than in supermarkets. It's a great place to run this, to make it happen, because it's easy to do.
And pretty much all of us frequent those environments.
This is it. You see lots of people, lots of customers, and a great place to do. And then, as I said, what really I think is important is taking that further then, and then also starting to create opportunities for young people, because it's a very labor-intensive industry. It needs lots of management. So what an ideal opportunity to go and get young people and to bring them up. And I know a lot of retailers are doing that, but we can still do a lot more. I mean, I work with some people in Botswana who have, all their young managers are from within. They are all local people that have been grown. And the opposition, there's one other supermarket group that's only got South African expat managers. And there lies the opportunity again to share the knowledge, to bring the people, to create these young retailers that can run the businesses of tomorrow on our continent. And it's not difficult. I mean, and people just say, we don't have time for all of that. We have got the people, so we can send them, but we must make the time. That's the little sacrifice now for the long-term success of the future.
Yeah, indeed. I think of the principle of I either have reasons or results, but never both. And, also, I'm just struck by how your beautiful way of framing, we should give each other good service out of respect, is how, because of the abundance of poor service,
yes,
is how you would imagine that respect becomes a competitive advantage.
And I think it is, and I think it will be in the future, because our continent is growing up, and our continent is reading, our continent is listening, and our continent is seeing what's happening elsewhere. So let's be in there and do it. And as I say, and it really is for me just about the respect.
Beautiful. Just looking at the questions. Molefi asked, what is your take regarding government's response to the COVID, especially since street traders have not been the most effective, or rather have been the most affected?
Yeah, I find that very sad. I mean, that's the one. I think our government, and who knows, I'm not a scientist, I don't understand. I grew up selling baked beans, but I think that it is important that we have the lockdown, and I fully support it, and I fully support the government there, and what a wonderful thing to see the honesty and transparency of the government in this situation if we compare it to some others. But the one thing I would have changed is I cannot understand why we would not allow our street traders to trade. That is such important business. I make a point in my personal life of supporting street traders, and it is their livelihood. I mean, the great supermarket chains have got reserves. They can survive. They can survive. But the small guys cannot. And every day's income is their spending for that day. That is what they buy their food for their house with. That's what they pay their children's education with. That's what they pay their rent with. So I'm really disappointed about that one aspect of it. And I'm not sure how we can do it efficiently, but I'm sure there's a way of allowing the traders to trade and allowing them to buy their goods, to keep the distance, the physical distance. Um, I just think, sometimes when we make decisions in a hurry, like we've had to do here, we oversee some things. It's normal. And this is probably what's happened here. But I do believe that they should be given the opportunity to work, because those are very important people. And as I say, they really rely on that trade.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm not too happy with that little part of the lockdown. Well, it's quite a big part.
Sure, and the same kind of measures that for in a pharmacy environment, for example, they've got a bunting across the sort of the dispensary thing. Just not because people necessarily go beyond that, but just as a just reiterating the social distancing, and then the mark.
Exactly.
I mean that doesn't just have to be in high-end traditional brick and mortar environments, does it?
No, absolutely. And also they fulfill such an important role, because some people can't get to the shops. It's much easier to get to buy their goods. So yeah.
For the convenience aspect that you made reference to earlier, is just down the street or just around the corner or just across the road is far more convenient than one could argue further layers of possibility of contamination on the transport that gets me to the shop and then gets me back, and so on and so on.
Exactly. We so often forget. Yet again, I remember we opened a store in Kliptown at Soweto, and a customer said to me, what is the best thing of this shop is that the money I would have spent on the taxi to go to Southdale and back from there, I can now use for groceries. And we often forget that convenience aspect, and that it's very expensive sometimes to go and buy your groceries at a faraway shop. Yeah, so that's the convenience aspect you're talking about.
Sure, and also the voucher system that can be purchased and shared via mobile.
Yes.
So we did that. Alicia is an integral member of our family, and because her mobility is far, hamstrung like everybody, we shared that with her so that she doesn't have to go anywhere. So she can stay and still remain, well nourished and looked after.
Again, it's back to the respect.
Always
understanding people's needs. That's respect.
Sure, and I guess indeed, and I suppose what is inherent in that respect is a greater mindfulness, so that it becomes not just in this period of lockdown, but ideally as an inherent practice is a far more altruistic lens on the world.
Yes.
Even in, and one could argue, especially in for-profit environments.
Yeah, exactly.
Trading.
Lower that profit a little bit for now, for the long term.
Sure.
And it's not anti-business, because we understand very full well that our businesses have to be successful to be able to create the opportunities. That's the whole concept of shared value. But surely we can sacrifice a little bit at a time of difficulty and build a better tomorrow. Eh?
Indeed. Yeah, for the common good.
Yes.
Christine asks, should there not be some unconscious or even conscious bias work done in retailers that work in townships and the rest of the continent?
Yes, I think it should be. It doesn't necessarily have to be unconscious. I think it should be conscious. Yes, we should. But we should also, I think, as a big business, or the bigger businesses that run those stores or have the franchisees that own those stores, should do a lot at educating the people that are in the areas. I mean, I was speaking to a young South African in Ghana in a supermarket, for instance. And I know this is moving a little way from our townships, but and I said to him, do you know the history of Ghana? And he said, no, I don't. I said, do you spend time with Ghanaian people? He said, I just work and go back to my home that they've given me. So it's that sort of thing. And exactly the same happens in our townships. Exactly the same. We don't speak to our customers. We simply, I asked the CEO of a shop in Brazzaville, I said, have you spoken to customers in your stores? He said, no. And looked at me and said, why should I be doing that? They're just here to buy the goods. So yes, I think so, yeah.
Which I think is also symptomatic of how, not just in the supermarket retail environment, but arguably, agnostic of sector or service, is that too often we make decisions on behalf of our customers from the boardroom.
Oh, but this happens so often, eh? This happens so often. Oh, you know, the great procurement guys, the buyers who buy these goods and never speak to the customers who are actually has to buy them later. They do it because they offered a specific promotion or a rebate or something. And they absolutely never, ever speak to a customer to find out what they actually need or what they want. Exactly that, yes.
Sure. You have spoken to it a bit already, but Kevin notes that as supermarket owners doing customer service training and people still sticking to their old ways, what advice can you give us to change that?
Well, it's today about taking, you know, we've done customer service and of course I have been part of customer service training and development but it's always been at how do we make the customer smile? And it's greeting the customer and it is making the customer leave happy. So this is a step further. We now want to place the customer at the very center of our business, meaning that every single decision we make in this business, we first ask, is this right for our customer? Will our customers enjoy it? Is it respecting our customers? Will our customers be able to come back? Will our customers feel at home here? Remember again, the old way of shopping on the African continent is a social thing. As Africans, we are social people. We go to the market and we talk and we eat there and we entertain there and we have the conversations and we share our knowledge and we share whatever we've experienced at home in the market area while we're buying. And again, we know all the traders and they know us, they know what we want. And that's how it was. So comes the modern supermarket, we limit the space, we send people in at the one end and we drive them through that supermarket as quickly as we can, hoping that they will leave quickly. If they linger around for a while, inevitably there's a security man looking or peering around the corner, trying to find out what they're doing. So we've taken that whole social element out. So what I'm saying to Kevin is it's about placing the customer in the center of your shop, and it's about recognizing also what will make our customers happy in our stores, that maybe they do want to socialize a bit in our shops. So let's change this thing. Let's make people enjoy that shopping experience, but enjoying it in an African sense, because it's a beautiful sense. And as I've said before, I think the values of the African continent, the old values of the African continent, is better than you can find anywhere else. And if we can live those values through our businesses, they will be beautiful businesses.
For sure. A great note, Marty says that the street vendor situation was changed yesterday.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you. So there we go. I missed that.
A big win, which is fantastic. So
that's absolutely great.
I guess it's also indicative of how Tom Ryan referred to the 21 lessons
yes.
we're in right now as a minimum viable product. And
yes.
2 weeks ago, it wasn't even conceived. And it reminds me that no matter how much thought and smarts and deployment is, that we're always making the path as we walk it, as are the government with all of their goodwill and advisory panels and so on, is, you know, try something with the best intentions and learn as we go, and we go, oh, that was an oversight. We didn't even think of that. Good, lift that, lock that down, and so on.
No, absolutely so. And Tom, just on that, you know, he's a great expert on the shared value. And I've learned a lot from him. And it is certainly a concept that I like very much. And that comes from Tom, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, shared value for the common good.
You know.
Just going through here, if you bear with me now. Leslie asks, would love to hear your views on exposing bad service. Goes on to say, do you think that people are only complaining about bad experiences because they are hoping to get something for free?
You see, most of people, most customers, and especially again, if we go to the townships, rural areas, the rest of our continent, don't complain at all. Now, I am not saying because they're just used to it. This is just how it's always been. And that's why I'm saying we need to surprise them with this and this great service. But we have some of those customers, obviously, that want something for free. But I do think they're in the minority. You know, I don't think that is, just as it's not a very few of our customers that would take something from a store without paying for it. And I always quote the famous example when I was a young training manager. We had a famous princess in Cape Town who used to shoplift and was often caught. You know, so it knows absolutely no social or standing in the community. But I don't think people do that. I have come across people, obviously, that do that. But it's fairly obvious. You know, you can usually see when somebody's trying to take a chance. But it's 5% or 2% even less than that. It is not. But our big problem lies in that most of our people are not saying anything. They simply go away. And this is, as a retailer, when the competition comes next door to you and they give better, that people will go there. They will silently just move there and never say anything. You know, our people are so used to, over years and years of being told what to do and when to do and how to do, just to accept. And it is also that we need to change. As I say, we need to get people to speak out. But yes, no, that's certainly the minority people but they are there, but they're not. It's not the bulk of our customers.
Sure. And I guess also what's being called out in us, based on what you are sort of introducing us to and also reminding us of, is that we shouldn't improve our customer service through competition, but in spite of it.
Well, that's it, you see, that's absolutely it. And it's a long-term thing as well, as I say. But it just, again, goes back to, it is what we want to do. We want to treat people with respect and therefore give them the good customer service. And then also give them the opportunities and sell them the hope and the purpose. We just have too many young people on our continent without purpose. And therein lies a problem.
Sure. I was just... Louise just notes that she was involved in the retail industry for years, and she's astonished that now in 2020, you know, the challenges of poor customer service continue. And just reading her her question, which I'll put to you in a moment, reminds me of recently a cognitive study was done in one of the large parastatals in South Africa that most of us either are customers of or have been in our lives. And I can't remember the details of the exact apparatus they used, but it was empirically measured that the most, and it was in the sort of 90% of the staff that were engaged in the study, that the most common emotion of the staff of this massive organization was disdain.
Yes.
And apparently based on neural, you know, yes, empirically. So it wasn't just being made up. So cool. All right, so Leroy notes that, hey, France, middle and senior management in retailers dominated by the old school retailers, which you've mentioned just now. How will young people get opportunities when this is the norm? Do you see this changing anytime soon?
Yes, it is a big problem, and it's a very good question. You know, we are sitting with people at the top that simply have been there for a very long time, and in most instances just are not willing to change. This is how, and you know, you hear it so often, and I'm sure Leroy has heard it too, where you go in and you bring a new idea, or you say, let's try this, and they say to you, no, wait, you know, you don't understand. I have been in this business for 30 years. I know how it's done. I will show you how it's done. Don't come with your, or please don't go and study things and bring it back to us. Retail is not about studying. Obviously, retail is not about studying, but retail is about studying and practical knowledge. Hey, it's the theory and the practical that you need to blend to become the best in this business. But we are going to have to confront them. We simply are going to have to confront them. We're not doing enough of that. They hold immense power, we know that. And they can make the decisions and they have the money. So it makes it so much easier and so much more difficult for the young people to confront this. I'll never forget, years ago, I had a young trainee manager. She was a lady from the Eastern Cape, a Xhosa lady from the Eastern Cape, and the most incredible energy and the most incredible knowledge and intelligent, but she did not take everything lying down. So she confronted and she questioned. Now, was she a young white male, she would have been promoted immediately. But because she was a young black woman, people say, oh my God, she's too cheeky, you see. She can't, no, we don't understand her, France, she's a problem. And it's that sort of thing. And that's just one example, but the whole industry is permeated with such examples. We need to confront the top and we need to get the top to think better because they are not at the moment. And I hope that some, as we look at it, is starting to see what needs to be done for sustainable prosperity on our continent. But many are not seeing it and are simply there for the short-term profit. So yes, it's going to take effort. We have to do it together. We have to continuously talk about it. We have to highlight the problems. And we have to share the success stories because we're not doing enough of that. There are young black retailers that are doing immensely great jobs while giving their people the customer service because they understand the culture, they understand the area they operate in. We have to share these success stories and make them bigger. And you know, people, those old school retailers love success. So if we can show them the success, we might move them. But you know how it goes. At times, when we can't get people, when we've tried everything, we've tried our best, we've shared the information, we've shown the success stories, and people don't want to come with, then unfortunately they need to be confronted. Eh?
Yeah. Maybe what we should...
It's a very valid problem.
Indeed, and maybe what we should do, if not in 21 lessons, in another series with Henley is to have a session on managing up, which many would argue is one of the toughest things because, you know, hierarchy exists. There's a lot about it that if it's done in a values-based way is very helpful, very powerful. The scaffolding, even to very high-functioning, ambitious people, is valued, is necessary. You know, around delegations of responsibility, delegations of authority, and also to have that voice. And it's not an easy thing because
it's very important. You are so right. I often speak about it in some of our sessions at Henley, how important it is to manage up, hey? How important it is to influence up. And it's a difficult thing. And now you can imagine it's even more difficult with our inequality and our history, because you are now coming from a previously disadvantaged area and you now have to confront this person who has always been made out to be, you know, this superior being who lives in Santa. And so we have to give our people those tools, absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
But it's all good for business. So we're not doing this just because we want to be funny. It is good for the long-term success of our businesses. It is not good, it's imperative.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, it reminds me of last week, Pepe Mire said that in his organization, every time they focused on revenue and the bottom line, their revenue has plateaued. And every time they've gone, well, back to purpose, back to why we're here and what we're passionate about, revenue then goes on up.
With an excellent presentation, that, and exactly, yes, well, you examples, yes.
Injabulo asks, France, do you think companies take the time to unpack customer experience surveys, or is it just a tick box exercise?
Some of them do, I think, I hope to think, but I've seen in many instances it's just a tick box exercise. because again, it gets into the middle level of management, and as it gets to the top, it sort of becomes a lesser important thing. You know, it's much more important to discuss the financial of the business, and of course the financials are important, of course they have to be discussed, but we should also discuss what impacts on them, and therefore customer centricity directly impacts. But yes, indeed, it gets lost somehow, you know, and it's not often seen as an important thing. I told you about the CEO that said to me, well, you know, why should I speak to my customers? They come and buy my things. I give them a shop, I give them the goods, I give them a till, it works. Now what would they want more than that? So it's exactly in that, you know, some again of the old school people are not seeing this as really something that we should be bothered with. We should be bothered with our stock holdings and our margins, and of course we should, because remember, we are saying we need to run an efficient business to enable us to create the shared value in a proper way.
Absolutely.
So we're not neglecting that. We are just saying, let's see this thing holistically. Huh?
Yeah, totally. Clive puts, what is your take on retailers who are tagging items such as infant formula, nappies, etc.? Is there an opportunity for subsidizing these goods?
Oh, they should most definitely be subsidized at this time. Most definitely. I am surprised that not one retailer has done it. Where's the respect for your customer? Why have we not subsidized them during this time? I've said before, and not in this presentation, but it is about the essential goods. So it's the bread, the maize, the chicken, the frozen chicken, but where? And the baby goods. Absolutely. What a wonderful gesture. How will we remember that forever to come when we talk about this time of COVID-19, which we're going to talk about because it's a first in our history. We've never experienced in our people anything like this. But we can then remember fondly, such and such a business subsidized the following, so I could get it for my children. Because we are living, I think, and we can't ignore it, in the most unequal society in the world. And that means that we have immense poverty around us. Even though I'm speaking here from Johannesburg in a suburb, there's immense poverty around us. Alexandra is just up the road. And what a wonderful gesture that would be. What a wonderful gesture. I'm surprised it hasn't.
And I suppose, while respecting that the retailers also, particularly because of, you know, in many instances, the small margins or low margins that you made reference to earlier, is that the retailers themselves still have high overheads with you know, rental salaries and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we understand that. But there is room for maneuver.
Of course.
There is room for maneuver, even if you just sell it at cost. Because remember, you are going to sell other goods. And there are other things in the system that can compensate in the retail system. So there is room for maneuver. Most definitely, there is room to pass on some or to sacrifice that profit on that line. And I know there's small profits because we're talking volumes, as I said earlier. So we're not ignorant about the facts, but we are just saying these are extraordinary times that need extraordinary actions. And that is the importance of it. Huh? But just a gift to your customers comes back to the whole concept of customer centricity. And I respect the fact that you are living in your small house with children and that they have needs. Here's our present to you.
And as you've made reference to earlier, is that the organizations that really authentically engage with shared value now will be remembered for a long time.
That's the thing. Because here is what we're going to remember. I personally am going to remember who treated me how in this period, and many of my acquaintances and people I speak to are telling me the same. So we are not unique. So everybody is doing it. So we are going to remember what has happened. And that's important, I think,
For sure. I'll use John's question as a way of concluding. Is it always true that the customer is always right?
No, of course not. No, of course it's not. And You know, it's also the whole, the CEO of Whole Foods also said, not always right, and is your customer always the most important? Well, they're not more important than your employees. There's an equal importance in that. But the customer is not always right. When customers start being racist, when customers abuses your employees, of course they're not right. So it is again, but there comes the emotional intelligence. We assess the situation and make that decision. But John, most definitely not always right, but often right.